Hey, welcome to the fourth episode of the Eurostep Hoops podcast. As of today, it's the 16th of August, so we just went through the play-in game with Portland and Memphis, meaning Portland has now reached the 8th seed of the NBA playoffs. And that means we can do what is called the prediction brackets, meaning we each will have our predictions of every team in every round when we eventually come over to a winner of the NBA playoffs.
And the same as we had for the individual award winners, we're going to have 2 points if we correctly predict the series winner, plus 1 more point if we have a correct score. So we add that to the individual scores, add it up all together, and we get the final scores.
Alright, so we will be first starting off in the Eastern Conference because I think that is the easier playoff picture to predict. And then we'll go over to the Western Conference where there's been a lot more narrow records. And I think that'll be a lot more to talk about, a lot more to dissect, and etc. So for me, in the Eastern Conference, we have Milwaukee, which is the 1 seed, and Orlando, which is the 8th seed. I have Milwaukee as a 4-0 sweep in this one. I don't see anybody stopping Giannis, at least in the first round, because Orlando, they don't have necessarily any decent defenders, knowing that Jonathan Isaac is out, and they don't have a lot of offense with Evan Fournier and Aaron Gordon out. So honestly, I think Orlando, they're just there for participation as the 8th seed, and I can just see Milwaukee easily sweeping through them.
Yeah, I agree. I have the Bucks looked a little off in the bubble, some due to rest, some due to just being rusty. They're 3-5 so far in the bubble, but Orlando has had nagging injuries, and Milwaukee should just take easy care of them come playoff time. Last year, I had the Milwaukee Bucks beat the Pistons 4-1, but they obviously swept them, so I'm not going to make the same mistake this time. I'm going for the easy 4-0 sweep.
Next up, we have the 5 and 4 seed, which is the Indiana Pacers and the Miami Heat. I think this series is going to be a really good series. However, I have Miami winning 4-3. Jimmy Butler will prove his leadership once again through the regular season in the playoffs as well. He's been known to perform okay. I'd say okay under the playoffs. Do you know how he did in the Philly series with Toronto?
He was a little bit like second, third option. He didn't. That was kind of hard because he couldn't really have that much opportunities with Embiid, Harris, and Simmons there.
Alright, that's tough. Yeah, but I'd say his leadership in the past will help Miami in the playoffs as well. Knowing with the resurgence of Bam Adebayo and Duncan Robinson, they'll play well, I believe, in the playoffs because you need floor spacing and you need passing, which is what Bam Adebayo gives with passing. And you know Duncan Robinson can hit the 3 at a high clip. So I can personally see Miami winning this in 7. However, I think TJ Warren will have a great series, knowing his history with Jimmy Butler. I don't know about the rest of the lineups because they don't have Sabonis, and I haven't seen that much of Turner. So just because of those reasons solely, I believe Miami has a better depth, and I believe Jimmy's leadership will propel them past the first round.
I agree. I don't have it 4-3. I have it 4-2, mainly because as we saw in the bubble game, they had TJ Warren go cold for the first time in the bubble, knowing how he played so far. So that was encouraging if you're in a Miami fan. So yeah, I agree with the fact that it's going to be probably Jimmy Butler versus TJ Warren there. But I like the fact that Miami has Bam Adebayo, who I think could take easy care of Miles Turner. But yeah, I think losing Sabonis is going to be pretty tough for Indiana because Brogdon and Oladipo have taken kind of a backseat and allowing TJ Warren to flourish. But it's going to be interesting to see how that will change in the playoffs, seeing if TJ Warren maybe goes cold.
Like, hey, you'll only know when you see in the playoffs. I think because TJ Warren played really well during the bubble in the regular season, I think he'll have very high expectations in the playoffs. So I guess to see how Indiana will do is based on how TJ Warren will do, mostly.
The playoffs is a different breed, so we'll have to see if his performance keeps up there as well.
All right. Next up, we have Boston Celtics versus Philadelphia 76ers. Knowing our playoff history, we tend to go to 7 games, quite a bit here and there. However, because Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons is out, I see us winning 4-2. I see Boston winning 4-2. I think Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Kemba Walker, I think they'll all have a great series versus Philadelphia personally. although Philadelphia have a lot of capable wing defenders with Matisse Thybulle and Josh Richardson, I just think because of losing Embiid and Simmons, it's just going to crumble their season, really. I don't see them going past the first round at all versus Boston because Boston has such capable wing defenders themselves. Gordon Hayward will probably play well. We'll probably see a little bit of Robert Williams, Daniel Tice, etc. getting their minutes as well in the playoffs. So I see 4-2 Boston.
How long do you think Embiid will be out?
I don't know. I think his return was probable, but I don't think that's enough to get past the first round with Boston at least, because knowing us, we'll probably cram the paint when Joel gets the ball. And other than Tobias Harris, who does Philadelphia really have with the three-point shooter? Korkmaz probably as well.
Shake Milton.
I think he averaged, 9 points in the bubble?
But he's a capable shooter. You know he can shoot. Tobias Harris has been shooting it more. But I see what you mean with the fact that, they have been kind of, as well as Al Horford, but, he's only been a shell of himself this season. But I think it's just up to Embiid if he can, post some crazy stat line as well as, take care of all Boston bigs. It's probably going to depend on that. But for me, I have 4-1 Boston with Embiid playing all the games and with Simmons out, of course. But I just see Boston throwing many defenders, switching everything, except for Embiid, of course, because you need Daniel Tice on him at all times. But, it's going to be pretty tough for the 76ers to find a way to create enough offense to get through the Celtics with their defensive versatility that they have, switching 1-4 all the time.
Yeah, so in my opinion, what I think Boston will definitely need to rely on for this series, or I guess in the entire playoffs, is Jaylen Brown, personally. Although Jaylen Brown was mostly a corner guy in last season, I think this season his isolation game has improved a lot. So I can see Jaylen getting a few ISO situations here and there in the playoffs, which will be crucial for Boston if they're going to succeed in the playoffs. I think we've talked enough about Boston and Philly this season. Next up, we have the the Toronto Raptors versus the Brooklyn Nets. I could see this as a 4-1 win by Toronto. Although Brooklyn, they're very undermanned, they're very injury prone with most of their players. They've been playing really well in the bubble. Caris LeVert has showed that he can be that third star that Brooklyn needed. Also with Jarrett Allen's defensive versatility in the rim, and also maybe he can run the break, which will help, gather some momentum, etc. I think that's enough for just one game, and maybe a few other close games down the stretch, but because of Toronto's system, Toronto's leadership, Toronto's championship experience, noting that they won the chip last year, I see Toronto most likely, beating them by ball movement, having all these role players that know their role, stepping up in the playoffs. So I see 4-1 victory to Toronto. I would never doubt their system, personally.
4-1 for me as well. Knowing Toronto, there's not going to be a sweep because they always lose game 1 historically. So I had them as 4-1. I've seen a lot of promise from Brooklyn, but I just can't see them moving past Toronto with the defense they have and all the players they can throw at them. Plus, they've almost gone a perfect 8-0, but they lost to Boston on a pretty bad night, shooting night. Other than that, they've beat some pretty good teams, including the Lakers. So I think this will be an easy series for the Toronto Raptors.
Yeah. All right. Next, so that is all the first round matchups in the Eastern Conference. I guess now we can go to the Western Conference. So we have the Los Angeles Lakers versus the Portland Trailblazers. I got Los Angeles Lakers winning this 4-2. Knowing that I have bet against LeBron for a few years now in the playoffs, knowing that he's, for example, had either A, disappointing seeding, or teammates getting injured, never doubt LeBron. So I see Lakers winning this 4-2. I think Portland will give them a hell of a fight as the 8th seed, but you'll never doubt playoff LeBron. Anthony Davis will step up, and if they need it, they'll probably get some contested J.R. Smith 3, which will probably go in. But other than that, I can see LeBron and AD carrying this team all the way to the finals, most likely. So I have 4-2 to the Lakers.
Do you see JR getting minutes?
I don't know if I'll see JR getting minutes, but I know he'll, at least if he gets some minutes, he'll at least, try, at least get some shots up. He'll at least hit them at some volume. But wait, who could start? Will Dion start over him?
I know Dion's getting more minutes than JR, but I think it's Caldwell Pope and Danny Green starting.
Yeah, although Danny Green has been a little bit cold, not a little bit, very cold during the season. I could see maybe JR getting a little bit of minutes because of, his championship days in Cleveland maybe. But other than that, I'll see LeBron and AD doing their regular thing in the playoffs. Because I know Anthony Davis has had, whenever he played in the playoffs, he's been doing really well, at least in New Orleans. So I'll see, Damian Lillard, he'll probably drop 40, 50, but I don't see that enough. I don't see that enough, as they don't have enough firepower yet to beat the top teams yet.
I have it 4-1. I've been encouraged by the way Portland has been playing. One game for Portland because anything can happen in the playoffs, and I think with the play that Lillard has had, as well as McCollum and Nurkic, they could obviously pull off at least one game. But I think that just because their depth is way too narrow, like 7-8 man rotation, I think they're gonna get worn down. And as you said, you can't really say no to playoff LeBron. And I think the reason why AD has been playing a little bit worse than he usually does is because he's taking that second man role this season, but he should start playing well in the playoffs because the rotations tighten up, and I think he's going to get more opportunities to show what he's worth, what he showed all season long, all career long, and I think it's going to be an easy 4-1 victory. Maybe some games will be close, but I can't see Portland winning more than one game against the Lakers.
Alright, yeah, that's fair. So for next series, I have 4-3 going to OKC versus Houston. And for me, there's nothing else to say other than that if Russell Westbrook would not have been injured this series, I would say around 4-2, 4-3 Houston, because Houston's small ball system is perfectly for someone like Russell Westbrook, who drives hard to the paint, can kick it out if he needs to, etc. But because he's not there, who is really Houston's second option other than James Harden? Who do you think they could possibly have drop 20?
Austin Rivers, he's been pretty great as their backup point guard. We all know who was it? I think it was Kevin Harlan with Here Comes Austin Rivers. I think he's become a meme now, but he has a pretty quick first step, as well as he can drop 30 any night. They have Eric Gordon coming back. I think he can be a second option. I was going to say Ben McLemore at the start, but I think Eric Gordon has shown that he can be a pretty good second option. So I'll pick Eric Gordon on this one.
All right. However, although I believe Russell Westbrook's impact exceeds far certain stats here and there. He plays 100% every game. He drives hard to the rim every time he gets a chance. Remember once he was driving to the rim and he met up top with DeAndre Jordan and he fouled him, and Russell said, meet me up top. That's just the kind of player he is. But I think Houston is gonna miss that. However, James Harden is probably one of the best pure scorers they've ever had in our league. I think he'll help Houston, but not enough towards CP3, Gallinari, Shea, Schroeder, Adams, even Lawrence Dort, who can probably play some good defense on James Harden if he probably had the chance. But I have OKC winning this 4-3.
Same for me, 4-3. We don't know how long Russell will be out, but I still think the series is going to be 4-3 just because OKC has shown so much promise in the bubble. They have so many guys they can go to, as well as they even now have a decent bench, which they've been missing for some years. They have Noel, Baisley, Schroeder, as well as Andre Roberson coming off the bench. So I think that's a pretty solid rotation. They can always have fresh legs on the court. Not as deep as some other teams like Denver or the Clippers, but I think that Russell Westbrook injury is really going to be tough on the Rockets, and I think it's pretty ironic that Rockets traded Westbrook to OKC. For Westbrook in exchange for trading Chris Paul, trying to get a less injury-prone player. But it's kind of ironic because now Westbrook is the one being injured and Chris Paul has been healthy most of the season.
All right, but next up we have Denver, which is the 3 seed, versus Utah, who is the 6 seed. I got Denver winning this 4-3. I believe Utah, I think they'll do a little bit better than expected, although their bubble run so far hasn't been that good because they missed Bogdanovic, and I believe he's a crucial part of their success. I have Denver winning this. Jokic is playing amazing. Michael Porter Jr. broke out and averaged over 20. we have solid, experienced players with Monte Morris and Grant and Millsap, etc. And we also have Jamal Murray, who came back recently after the injury. And I can see him and Jokic, doing the regular thing, playing well. Jokic doing the passing, and hang on. Before I keep going, could you see Bol getting minutes?
The way he's been playing right now, I think he could be a solid backup player. I don't know which position is he going to play, either small forward that we started this season or going back to center, but he showed promise, and I really liked what I saw from him.
Yeah, he proves that he can average close to 15 points per game, and I think that's all that Denver needs. I think he could be a potential wild card factor in these playoffs if he gets the chance to play. However, I have 4-3 Denver on this one.
I have it a little bit easier for Denver. I have it 4-1 because the Bogdanovich injuries really hurt the Jazz. I think if you're talking about X factors, the one for Utah definitely has to be Jordan Clarkson. If he shoots at a high percentage and a high clip, I think they have a chance to pull off a game or two. Other than that, it's kind of hard betting on the Nuggets because of their depth. Jokic has played good. Michael Porter Jr. has been great. Even with the fact that they haven't had their full roster healthy the whole bubble season, I think now they're going to get back to, where everyone's good. But I think Utah hasn't really showed me that much where I can believe that they can take more than a game off of Denver, so I'm taking 4-1 to Denver.
Alright, that's good. Next up, we have the Clippers versus the Mavericks. I have the Clippers winning this 4-2. Kawhi Leonard, he's proved again this season that, he is truly a top 3 player in the league, along with top 5, top 10 player in Paul George, potential MVP candidate with, I'd say, Kawhi Leonard. Although I'd say he's a close 4th this season. Average, 27, 29 points?
MVP? I'm picking Luke as this 4th one because he wasn't in the top 3. I think it was Giannis, LeBron, and James Harden.
Yeah.
And I'm probably going to take Luke as 4, but other than that, I think 5 is up to anybody. It could be Kawhi as well.
Yeah, but however, I have the Clippers winning this 4-2 because Kawhi Leonard, he does what he wants in the playoffs. Paul George has been good. They have 6th Man of the Year candidate Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell as well. They have shooters with Landry Shamet. They have also one of the Morris brothers. So they have a lot of playoff experience. People forget Landry Shamet was on that Clippers team that upset Golden State during that 30-point comeback. The guy hitting the game winner. So I can see that as a sign of him going far, at least in the playoffs. But I won't take anything away from Luka and KP. I bet they will each have amazing series. I just don't think that is enough to propel them past the Clippers.
The game against the Bucks for the Mavericks, that was just a showcase that they can, hold up against any team in the league. They've been up and down recently. That's why I have them also losing to the Clippers 4-2. They can definitely take a game or two off with the way we know that they can get hot on offense with Luka and KP. But it's just hard betting on the Clippers' depth. All the names you showed, as well as Reggie Jackson, Patrick Patterson. Also, Montrezl Harrell is going to be back, so I don't know when, but that's a load of boost, like 30 minutes per game, a center they can use, especially against the Mavericks, who use kind of a small ballish centers with Kleber. I think that could play a huge part, but you can't bet against Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. I think their star power is just much more than what Dallas has, so it's going to be probably a 5-6 game series, but it's just going to be hard for the Dallas Mavericks to take 4 games off the Clippers.
Yeah, we at least agree on that. Next up, we're going to go back to the Eastern Conference, and here we will have the Eastern Conference semifinals. Milwaukee versus Miami. I have this as a grueling 7-game series, with Milwaukee winning this 4-3. Although the Heat have beat Milwaukee twice already in the regular season with crowding the paint when Giannis drives, forcing him to dish it out. However, when he dishes it out to the corner or the wing, the Heat, immediately they go straight to the shooter, forcing a contest and probably forcing a miss as well. However, I believe Giannis is after the chip this year. I think he, last year was a little bit disappointing for him, knowing that they got, they won the first 2 games, but then they got swept by the Toronto team with Kawhi and the others. But I think Giannis is after the chip this year. I think he's going to be a man on a mission. I'm expecting great numbers from him throughout the playoffs, and because of that, I have 4-3. Also, I won't discredit Dante DiVincenzo, George Hill, Chris Middleton, and Brook Lopez as X factors for the playoffs as well. In my opinion, they are solid pieces to have around Giannis, and I think they can potentially win the championship with this lineup.
I have Miami losing 4-2. I know Miami's had Milwaukee's number for most of the season. They also have the perfect offense against Milwaukee's defense, which is trying to, have the players shoot. As we know, Milwaukee's trying to crowd the paint all the time, and Miami has a lot of shooters who can get hot. Most notably Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero, even Jay Crowder. But it's hard betting against the Milwaukee Bucks. Of course, for this series, I think Giannis is going to have to dish the ball more out because they have so many versatile defenders, Miami Heat. So it's going to come down to if the Milwaukee Bucks role players, as well as their all-star Chris Middleton, can knock down their shots. If they do, it's going to be an easy breeze. If not, I can see this going to a 7-game series. But for me, I'm going in the middle. I'm going to 4-2, tough series for the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I think personally this series is the biggest series that, anything can happen.
Yeah.
It can either go up and down for either team at any moment. So I could see this as, potentially, threatening for Milwaukee. One of the most threatening games.
How many minutes do you think Giannis is going to, average, not only in this series, but in the playoffs in general? Because he's only played like 30 minutes per game in the regular season.
I know. I think if they need him, I think he's going to average like close to 33, 34 minutes. A little, probably more or less 2-3 minutes around that category. But I have around 34 minutes for the guy. They're going to need him in the playoffs. He's probably going to say, coach, play me. So, you can't say no to that if he really wants to make his team win. However, if they played him like they played him in the regular season, playing 30 minutes, maybe they lost some games because of the less minutes he's played than average. So be it. But I could see him getting a little minutes increase because, it's the playoffs, the pressures is higher, and, the game slows down. So I say Giannis will get a little bit more minutes. A few role players will get a little bit less minutes. Maybe the backups for certain other positions that Giannis will probably take up because he can play many positions on the court.
You remember how LeBron said he was going to play like 48 minutes when he played against the Pacers first round? Imagine if Giannis played 48 minutes.
Jesus.
I think that team will be unbeatable.
Yeah, I hope only that Giannis has good fatigue, because he drives to the rim so much, and he has the ball in his hands constantly. Main option. Maybe fatigue will be an issue. Maybe that's why he's not playing over 30 minutes.
I think foul trouble is also a huge thing because all of those offensive fouls he could get driving inside. So I think that could be a huge problem, especially against the Heat, where a lot of their players are driving kick. He could get in some foul trouble quickly, so I think he has to be careful with that.
Yeah. But only time will tell to see how Milwaukee will play. However, me and you agree, we have Milwaukee advancing to the next round. Versus, for me, it'll be Milwaukee versus Toronto in the Eastern Conference Finals. I have Toronto winning this in a close game. Close 7-game series with Boston. I believe that, Nick Nurse has proven himself as a 100% Coach of the Year candidate. We have most of the lineups that came back from the championship team back to the regular season, and I can see how Siakam has taken a step up, Fred VanVleet has taken a step up, and several other role players for Toronto will take that step up in the playoffs. Norman Powell wasn't he Player of the Week at one point
in the regular season?
In the regular season, yeah, I remember there was
Player of the Month.
Yeah, I think Raptors had several different Player of the Months. Like one player had this month, another player had this month. Something like that, yeah. So Toronto has proven that, players are willing to buy into their system, They focus more as a team than most teams in the league. But I won't take anything away from Boston. I believe Boston will, they'll fight with Toronto. It's just that Toronto has a lot of wing defenders. They have a lot of players who can draw charges. Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet, of course, are some of them. I think Kyle Lowry was one of the most, I think he has most charges drawn. It was either him or Ilyasova.
Kyle Lowry has the most at 30-something.
Yeah, around 30-something. But I think Boston will put up a great fight. I believe it would be a tie for those three teams. I just think Toronto has that little championship experience to propel them a little bit more. Because, they have two guards who can defend Kemba, and they're each around similar height. We have Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet, who I believe can do a decent job on Kemba Walker. However, Kemba Walker, not taking anything away from the guy, he'll probably average over 20, and Jason Tatum will probably play well. However, I'm a little bit suspicious, just a little bit, with his efficiency during the playoffs, because during the season he has been up and down. However, towards the second half of the season he was trending towards superstar level. However, in the bubble it was a little bit up and down. First game with Portland, I didn't even want to watch the guy. Other games he's had good, other games he's had okay. However, what I believe Boston needs the most is Gordon Hayward. I believe Gordon Hayward is going to have to step up and increase his, maybe do a little bit more. I'm not saying he's doing too less, but I believe, he should step up maybe a little bit during the playoffs. Maybe average 17, 18. If Boston's going to win.
I think he has close to 17 for this regular season. But I think the player you haven't talked about, what I think is the biggest X factor for Boston winning this series,
Marcus Smart.
Jaylen Brown. You said Fred VanVleet and Kyle Lowry can defend Kemba Walker, but who's defending Jaylen Brown?
Who's defending Jaylen Brown? They have Rondé Hollis-Jefferson.
But
they
in the
have
starting lineup.
OG Anunoby.
Starting lineup.
OG. Isn't OG starting?
Oh, right. Who's guarding Jason Tatum then?
Who's guarding Jason Tatum? Who do they have in the starting lineup?
They have two small guards, OG, Pascal, and either Marc Gasol or Ibaka. I think it's Gasol.
Can't Pascal Siakam guard Jason Tatum? He has length. He's
Alright,
fast.
who's guarding Hayward then?
Who's guarding Hayward then? I don't know.
Yeah, if you look at the position-wise, I think shooting guard it's Fred VanVleet versus Jaylen Brown.
And
that's
tough.
when we saw the game where Celtics completely dismantled the Toronto Raptors. Jaylen Brown had a good game, a lot of post-ups against Fred VanVleet. He also had that great Christmas game, scoring 30 points against the Raptors. They've had the Raptors number the whole season, 3-1 in the series. I'm picking the Boston Celtics win 4-3, just because the last game showed me that they're both good defensive teams, but just Boston has a lot more firepower they can throw on the offensive end. They completely locked down Pascal Siakam, and without him, it was really hard for the Toronto Raptors to score. I agree that it's going to be a close series, but I think the Boston Celtics are going to, come out with this one 4-3.
Yeah, personally, I wouldn't be mad at either way because we're both Celtics fans.
Yeah,
I hope Boston proves me wrong. It's just that I'm really keen on Toronto's system, and I believe, they're built for the playoffs. They're a playoff-built team.
What do you think they should do if they do go to the conference finals? Because that's a strong, they're a strong team even without losing probably the top 4 player in the world. What do you think they should do for the upcoming seasons? Because Kyle Lowry's getting old. Fred VanVleet needs a contract extension. What do you think their plan should be if they do, become successful this season?
If they become successful this season, how they should do it, I believe they should, buy into the ball movement, get the open shot if you can, but also rely on, a little bit of Pascal Siakam here and there. But let's say the season's over, right? Kyle Lowry's getting up in age. I think maybe they should experiment him coming off the bench. Maybe.
Who's starting them?
Who's starting them? I'd say maybe Fred VanVleet will start. And I say maybe Norman Powell should take a step up. I think Norman Powell would be a great starting option. Because how old is Kyle Lowry? 34?
Yeah.
He's 34. You never know when that big decline will come down. I mean, look at, for example, Carmelo Anthony. He took that, he came back to Portland, and he averages what? 15? 16
and a half.
16 and a half. A big dip from his days in, for example, New York when he was slightly younger, averaging over 20, although efficiency was a little bit, suspect. You know what I mean. I think Kyle Lowry will slightly dip in, points, assists, etc. But at 34, he's proved that he's still got it. However, I believe maybe a bench role will be better for Kyle Lowry, leave the second unit, and I believe Norman Powell or OG could take a great, shooting guard small forward spot for Toronto next season. Fred VanVleet will probably get his contract, and I think he'll be the point guard for the future for Toronto.
The question is he going to get his contract in Toronto?
I personally think the Toronto Raptors should buy in, although I've heard there are rumors that the Knicks will offer Fred VanVleet a bag. I don't know. I believe Toronto should keep him because Fred VanVleet is the gritty guy you need. 2 steals per game, draws charges, and he can shoot the 3 well. But if he'll stay there next season, I don't know. But if he leaves Toronto, I believe Kyle Lowry should stay and take the reins. But we'll see.
All right, what do you have for the Western Conference semis?
The Western Conference semis, I got 4-3 LA versus OKC. I believe OKC is going to surprise a lot of people, especially in this series if they make it. I think Danilo Gallinari will have a good series. I think Chris Paul and Shea, they're going to do regular stuff. But the guy I'm really expecting to step up, at least towards the bubble, is Dennis Schroeder. The Lakers, they don't necessarily have that much bench power. You know, they have Quinn Cook. They have Rajon Rondo's injured, but they have Quinn Cook. They have Alex Caruso.
Howard.
They have Dwight Howard as well. But OKC, they have Dennis Schroeder. They have Abdul Nader, who will play a little bit. But enough about that. Dennis Schroeder, I believe he needs to step up. He averaged, 13 points per game in the bubble. Not that much efficiency. I believe, he needs to average way more points than he did in the regular season towards the playoffs. I think he's the huge X factor for the second unit in OKC. However, I have the Lakers beating the OKC Thunder 4-3. Anthony Davis will probably, I don't know if Steven Adams can guard in the perimeter, so I believe maybe Anthony Davis could take him one-on-one on the perimeter if they do so. However, Lorenz Dort, I believe he'll guard LeBron pretty okay, but it's LeBron. You're not stopping playoff LeBron. LeBron will probably still have his way most of the time. But OKC Thunder, I think they'll surprise the Lakers a little bit, get a few games, but I have the Lakers ultimately winning this series 4-3.
Yeah, I like what I've seen from Oklahoma. I would gladly give them 2 or maybe even 3 games, but as I said in the first round, it's kind of hard betting against the Lakers, so I have them winning 4-1. They have a lot of players that can throw at Oklahoma, as well as I think it's going to be tough for Oklahoma to play against the Lakers' length that they have with McGee, Davis, and Dwight Howard. So I have the series as 4-1. Who do you think is the player who can guard LeBron for OKC?
I think their best option is Lorenz Dort. He's a physical 2 guard, maybe could play the 3 guard, but any other options than that, I don't have many. Do you have any?
Yeah, I guess either Dort or Gallinari.
Yeah, but
it's gonna be tough.
Gallinari's a little bit on the slower side. LeBron is a freight train. He is a freight train on a fast break. Do you see Gallinari stopping LeBron on a fast break?
I don't see anybody stopping LeBron on the fast break. That's why I have them easy 4-1 victory. I think the games are going to be close, but series-wise is going to be look easy as a 4-1 victory for the Lakers. I just can't really see teams like Oklahoma, Portland really giving them that much problems come playoff time.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Next up is a series for me personally. I'm really excited to see. We have the Denver Nuggets versus the Los Angeles Clippers. I have Clippers winning this in 7. Kawhi Leonard. I think Kawhi has an elite mid-range game. His mid-range game is really close to what I saw with Chris Paul. Chris Paul taking the fadeaway on the wings. You know what I mean, by the free throw line. Kawhi Leonard has incorporated that into his game. He's incorporated a little bit of Kobe with the footwork, the jab steps, the drive-bys. But yeah, I have 4-3 for the Clippers here. I believe Paul George will have a series. I believe Harrell and Lou Williams will do their regular things. However, the Denver Nuggets, I think they'll come up with a great fight. Jamal Murray, although he can't defend that well, and I believe Patrick Beverley will probably do a good job because it's Patrick Beverley. I believe Jamal Murray and Jokic will probably have decent series, and I'm excited to see what Michael Porter Jr. will do versus the likes of Kawhi and PG, because he has length over them. He doesn't have strength surely, but he has a nice touch, and I believe he can maybe drive to the rim, get some buckets here and there. But I want to see Michael Porter Jr. break out versus the Clippers if he's really gonna prove why he's elite. Probably what to me was Jason Tatum dunking on LeBron. Like, it's solidified that Jason Tatum's, here in the NBA. I believe Michael Porter Jr. will have a breakout game versus the Clippers. It'll be tough, but, he's a player, I believe, who could pull it off the bat.
I was going to talk about if the Denver Nuggets have, like a pure shot creator. We all know we have Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic, but do they have, like, an elite shot creator?
I think maybe Michael Porter Jr. could do that.
if he can step in that role, fill those shoes, I think Denver might have a chance because both of the teams are really deep, probably the two deepest teams in the league. But as I said in the first round series, it's kind of hard betting against the two wing duo with Kawhi and Paul George. I don't think Denver really has that many players that can throw on them that can actually contain them. And knowing that they have Lou Williams as well as Montrez coming back, as well as Reggie Jackson, who's a very nice, serviceable point guard. I have the series as 4-2 going to the Clippers. It's just really hard betting against them for me.
Yeah. So right now we have the Eastern Conference Finals and Western Conference Finals. For me, I have Toronto versus Milwaukee. I have Milwaukee winning this in the 7-game series. Personally, I don't think anybody should be that surprised if Milwaukee or Toronto reaches the finals because they are, in my opinion, like a tiny step above Boston. Just because Boston, they haven't really gone to the finals yet. Neither has Milwaukee, but Giannis is a man on a mission this season, and I can see him just carrying like how Damian Lillard carried the Blazers this series. 4-3 Milwaukee, although Toronto lost Kawhi, I think that is a huge downgrade because Kawhi Leonard played really excellent defense on Giannis. Pau Gasol was there as well, but Marc Gasol was there, but we haven't seen much of Marc Gasol this bubble. I guess maybe age has caught up to him, but nevertheless, Giannis will probably beat anybody off the dribble versus the Toronto Raptors. Siakam and Giannis, they're somewhat of the same height, right?
Yeah, like 6'9", 6'11".
Yeah, 6'9", 6'11", but Giannis has strength. He got so much muscle during these years that he can bully so many people. So I think it'll be tough to stop Giannis, at least this playoff series, because he's a guy who I see, he's a guy who I can see he doesn't need the crowd to feed off of. He just wants to win. Just wants to win at any cost, and I think that's enough to drive them to the finals. I think Dante DiVincenzo and George Hill will be crucial. Brook Lopez, in my opinion, will be the third option here. With Chris Middleton, I'm expecting Chris Middleton to shoot really well if they're gonna keep going. But I'm excited personally to see Dante DiVincenzo a lot. He reminds me a little bit of what we have in Marcus Smart, doing all the little things, can do playmaking, does the perfect cuts at the right time. Overall, he's like everywhere on the basketball court. So I believe and I hope that he does well in the series. So that's why I have 4-3 to Milwaukee.
Yeah, as you know, I had Boston going ahead of Toronto, so I have Milwaukee versus Boston. Knowing last year it was a 4-1 victory to Milwaukee, I think this year the Celtics have gotten better, so I'm still taking Milwaukee. I'm taking them 4-2, just because I haven't really seen Milwaukee, or I haven't seen the Celtics really contain Giannis that much. And as we know, Chris Middleton, we know that he turns into prime Reggie Miller when he plays versus the Celtics. So it's hard for me to pick the Celtics, even though I love them so much. I love how they've been playing. They've had pretty close games against the Milwaukee Bucks. But if Giannis plays more minutes and if the rotation is tightened down, I don't really see them putting anybody on Giannis. They have to defend half court so he doesn't get a steam ahead. And I think the only player who can really do that is Daniel Theis. And if he guards Giannis, half court, who's going to defend the paint? Like, who's going to get Brook Lopez? I think that's going to be a huge problem for the Celtics. What do you think?
I think that'll be a huge problem for them as well because we've been struggling a little bit with interior defense and rebounding over the past seasons.
Yeah.
We've had players like Amir Johnson and Jared Solinger, be our center. So, we've been struggling with rebounding here and there, but I hope Daniel Theis turns into playoff Al Horford, like from last year.
That's going to be tough to.
That's going to be tough, but that's what Boston needs from him in order to beat, the powerhouse that is Milwaukee.
But yeah, I have Milwaukee going 4-2. I see them going to the finals. It's interesting how you have Milwaukee having 2 Game 7s up to the finals. Do you think it's going to be that tough of a road for them?
A little bit yes and a little bit no, because over the stretch of the bubble we've been seeing a lot of players shoot a lot higher efficiency. So I'm expecting several good games from, the streaky shooters you get from those teams. So that's why I expect maybe a little bit tougher, a little bit of a tougher matchup. with the big teams compared to the small teams. So that's why I have a little bit harder, just because we've seen players, average crazy numbers over the bubble. Because, the crowd is not there, it's not the same vibe. And maybe for some players, it's a practice. And some players play amazing under practice. For example, I saw the Los Angeles Lakers, they won the chip, and Kobe Bryant was on this talk show, and he was talking about Adam Morrison. You know Adam Morrison. He was, the bust that got drafted, looked like a great guy in college. And although he didn't do much during the playoffs, he was in a suit most of the time, Kobe said, every NBA player is good, that guy, can get it going in practice. Maybe some players, for some of these teams we see that are not expected to win, maybe some players will step up in the playoffs, and that's why I see, some teams maybe struggling a little bit here and there. That's why I see 4-3 with Milwaukee and Toronto, 4-3 with Toronto and Boston, and even 4-3 with Miami and Milwaukee.
Yeah, I see your point. As well as looking at the West, you have a tight series between the Lakers and Clippers.
Yeah, I got 4-3 Lakers. I just believe, Showtime LeBron will come here and save the day as usual. Although I believe it's a really tough matchup with Kawhi. I personally believe they've been like a little bit of rivals with the playoffs ever since Miami was in Miami versus San Antonio years back. I remember when Kawhi won his deep Finals MVP versus guarding LeBron really well and playing exceptional. And I remember LeBron, he was at the free throw line at one point. He was mad that Kawhi Leonard came back into the game. Yeah, I remember that clip. But I'm expecting to watch that angry face playoff LeBron versus Boston this series, like this playoff run right here, because he wants to prove that he's trying to catch up to Michael Jordan. I think this is a prime opportunity to show that maybe the GOAT conversation will head not towards LeBron's favor. Not that he's better than Jordan. Not that I'm saying Jordan is better than LeBron either. I personally believe that we should appreciate what we see from both. Maybe for the people who care about the GOAT conversation, maybe they'll have a case towards debating for why LeBron is the GOAT if he wins this series, because how many players have won a championship with 3 teams?
None. Literally none. He's going to be the first team. Or Kawhi. It's a race between Kawhi and LeBron.
Race between Kawhi and LeBron?
Oh, no way.
Yeah, Kawhi and LeBron. Kawhi has 2.
Robert Horry.
Robert Horry, he has 7 rings.
Lakers, Spurs.
And did he play with Hakeem with Houston? No, I think he's too young for that.
I think the question would be who has won 3 titles with 3 teams and Finals MVP.
That makes a lot. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
narrows
sense.
It down to nobody. But LeBron and Kawhi are on the verge of doing it, and I think this series will change the narrative.
If the Clippers win the chip this season and Kawhi has an exceptional series, would you see him as somebody overtaking Giannis as the best player in the league?
No. Do you see Giannis' best player as in who's winning MVP?
Not as best player, but for example, so far with the best, player at the moment with recent success.
I still think Giannis is better because he's just unstoppable on the offensive end, but Kawhi's being more consistent. I think his only downfall is just because he has load management, meaning he plays less games, and that kind of factors into the fact that he might not be regarded in the topics of like all NBA team or MVP. But when it comes down to the playoffs, it's like a lot of players play better in the playoffs. A lot of players play worse. If you have to count Kawhi and Giannis there, I think Kawhi edges that battle. But overall, I still think Giannis is currently the best player, and he's only going to get better from now.
Yeah, how old is he? 24? Around 24?
Yeah.
I'd say mid to early 20s.
25.
He's 25, so he still has a long way to go. And I also want to see how Giannis will do when he's 40. Maybe his game will change, because he said he wanted to play in Greece when he was around 40.
It's tough for a person like him because he relies on athleticism so much.
I know. For example, Vince Carter, he relied on athleticism.
But he could only shoot as well. So that
exactly. In my opinion, you're gonna if you want to last in the league for a long time, even till you're on the verge of retiring, learn how to shoot, because that's the trend the NBA is going towards. We're gonna have big shooting, a lot of threes now. Karl-Anthony Towns, he shot 40% from 3 this season.
Yeah, with all the step-back threes he's been doing, I think if he played more games, he could definitely also be in the All-NBA first or second team conversation.
such as and I personally believe Bradley Beal should have gotten a little bit of votes as well because he averaged 30 in that Washington Wizards team, and they went 0-5 in the bubble. But anyway, 0-8, Jesus. But anyway, anyway, I have 4-3 the Lakers versus Clippers. I think LeBron will turn up, AD will turn up. McGee will probably have a block party because the Clippers, they have smaller centers such as Zubac and Harrell, so I could see JaVale getting a few blocks as well. So have you also talked about
no. I have to talk.
You have to talk about Clippers and Lakers.
I like your opinions on the Lakers Clippers series, but I'm gonna go with the Clippers on a 4-3 tough win. It's been interesting seeing them all regular season long. I think the series is 2-2. All of the games have been close. But as I said in the earlier series for the Clippers, it's just so hard betting on them when they have so many players that can play solid minutes, such a deep team, and they have lineups for everybody. They can just put anything on the court and it'll probably work just because Doc Rivers is such a great coach at managing egos. They have players, they need 3-point shooting, they got 3-point shooting, they need defense, they have defense, they need like small players who have speed, they have that as well. So for me, I think it's also hard betting against the Clippers here. That's why I have them winning 4-3 against the Lakers. In my opinion, this could also be a final series. I think I would pick the Lakers and the Clippers above the Bucks. Even though the Bucks have the best record in the league, I think it's kind of inevitable to see the Lakers and Clippers in the conference finals. I think something horrible has to happen for somebody else to go in there. But I think that series is going to be one for the ages to watch. But I'm picking the Clippers over the Lakers on this one.
I'm actually really excited about that series as well. But for me in the finals, I have to go 4-3 Milwaukee, edging out LA. I think Giannis is on a path to greatness, and I believe he will lead his team to the championship. MVP and Defensive Player of the Year, nominations. And I personally believe, he'll carry this team to victory. He's probably going to average over 30 points, over 12 rebounds, over 5 assists, with a few blocks as well. But I believe, it'll come with a struggle. JaVale McGee, he can guard the rim really well. They also have Anthony Davis, who can guard the rim, who is also a Defensive Player of the Year nominee. And, he's a solid, on-ball defender as well. He can defend a few guards as well. So he could probably defend, George Hill and etc. But I won't discredit anything with LeBron. I think, Milwaukee is going to be a tough defensive system for LeBron. I believe they come defensively prepared better than any other team in the league with Milwaukee. I think Milwaukee will, play really good defense with, the length they have, the role players they have, the willingness on defense. Because, Giannis is the type of player who leads by example. For example, they were up by 20 versus Philadelphia at one point, and you still see Giannis diving after the loose ball while Joel Embiid was jogging back. And that's the I have huge inconsistency problems with Joel Embiid at times. But nevertheless, I believe Giannis is after the chip this year. And I believe Giannis will win the NBA Finals this year, but I'm not saying it's going to be, convincingly. I think he's going to struggle a bit here and there, but great players have to rise for that occasion. And I think LeBron is in the same boat. He's had, from missing the playoffs last year, I think he's on a mission this year as well. But I think, Giannis took that, that loss versus the Kawhi Toronto team to heart. I think he's on the Michael Jordan thing with, he took it personal a little bit. So I see Milwaukee winning this. I believe Giannis is going to have a huge playoff series this season.
If you do see the Lakers going to the finals, do you really see them losing Game 7? Well, like LeBron historically has only lost 2 Game 7s with a bum team that he had on the Cavaliers before 2008. Ever since then, he's never lost a Game 7.
That's a solid argument, but we see a freak of nature in Giannis, and why shouldn't he take over games? He's had game winners. He's had, he's played well under many playoff games as well. I don't see why he should be any different than LeBron.
I think it's just so much experience that LeBron has had. As Giannis, I think Giannis' only Game 7 was against the Celtics, and they lost that game, but that was a long time ago. I just think the Milwaukee Bucks team, they aren't that experienced. I think who's their most experienced player in playoff wise?
In playoff wise, I'd
Probably
say
Ilyasova maybe.
Ilyasova or George Hill. probably.
And even George Hill has gone to the finals once. But other than that, I think the Lakers have so much more experience. Danny Green, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. He hasn't gone past round 2, but you know how he can play. It's just going to be hard seeing how, if the Lakers and Bucks match up, how in Game 7, I don't really see LeBron losing that matchup.
Yeah, I think what LA needs to do to win, and I think this is a really, underrated category, and I think pacing. I think Milwaukee, they're a very pace-heavy team. With running with Giannis on the rig, I see countless lobs. But I think what LeBron and the Lakers are really good at is that they have a good half-court offense and a good full-court offense. LeBron, he's a great pick-and-roll player with Anthony Davis. He can get lobs. He can do the pass to the corner, pass to the wings. He'll find the open man. So what I think the LA Lakers, or what specifically LeBron needs to do, is control the pacing. If they, for example, concede, many fast break buckets to Milwaukee, I can see LeBron saying, isolate me a little bit, slow down the pace. And I can see him maybe taking over a few games. But, I think that's what he needs to do. And what the Lakers need to do is control the pace of the game in order to win. Hit their shots, hit their corner threes, and I think they'll be fine.
I think what they haven't showed much is LeBron and AD pick and roll. That's probably the most deadliest thing. They haven't really showed that much in the regular season because they're probably holding out for the playoffs. So teams don't know what to do. I think that could be the X factor for the whole playoffs for the Lakers. Maybe their chances of winning the Clippers as well as the Bucks. So that, if I had that argument, I'd probably pick the Lakers over the Bucks. But time will tell if they use it and how other teams will cover it.
Yeah. Also, I think we both forgot to mention him, Kyle Kuzma. He's had a great bubble season. If they're going to win the whole thing, we need that Kyle Kuzma that we've been, the Lakers have kind of been promising. I thought Lonzo Ball, he makes players around him better. You saw in the Summer League, him and Lonzo, full court passes everywhere. But Kyle Kuzma has shown that he can shot create. Maybe he's that isolation scorer, the third ISO scorer the Lakers need. I personally believe he needs to, average at least 16, 17 points per game on good efficiency in order to help the Lakers propel all the way up. Even though he said, if Jesus stood in front of me, I'd still shoot it. He needs to make it at a high. He needs to make it at a high clip during the playoffs. As Jordan said, 72-10 doesn't mean a thing without the ring. Exactly. I think Kuzma can have the best series of his life, but if the Lakers lose, it's as if nothing's happened towards last season.
That's true. But yeah, for me, I have the Clippers matching up against the Bucks, and again, I can't really see how the Bucks can really edge out the Clippers in this one. I'm picking the Clippers 4-2 just because of the fact that they have so much depth. They can put anything against the Clippers, and I think an interesting fact is that we really haven't seen the Clippers played the Bucks in 2020. Their last game was only in 2019, so early on in the season, so we haven't really seen that. But for me, I'm taking the Clippers over the Bucks this year. I just like what I've seen so far, and if everybody's healthy, I think that team is very scary to watch, and it's also a pleasure to watch. I'm more excited for the Lakers series though, but I think 4-2, it's probably gonna be easier for them to match up against the Bucks than it is against the Lakers. But it's 4-2 for me. I'm taking the Clippers to win the whole chip.
All right. We've had some differences with our bracket. We've also had some similarities. I think most of the similarities we've had is in the first round of both standings. However, we've had some differences with the second and third round of the finals. But I think I think this will be a really great playoffs in general. We've had a lot of surprises with the Thunder. I think we've had a lot of surprises also with the Rockets and their new lineups. We've had players trying to prove something now with Kawhi Leonard moving teams. We've had a team trying to prove themselves this year without Kawhi with the Raptors. We've had Jason Tatum and company stepping up probably. I'm expecting them to step up. And we've had Giannis probably angry as hell from last year. He's probably on man on a mission this year. And LeBron, etc. with missing the playoffs last season. I think they're going to do a lot. So anyway, I think this is it for this episode. We've covered everything, more or less.
Yeah, and I think we're going to find out in October who wins the whole thing points-wise between us. And in a couple of weeks, we're probably just gonna, dissect every series and what each team should do moving forward. So that's gonna be really interesting to do as well.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to look back, see what we could have done, maybe laughed at his prediction we made here and there.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But anyway, take care.
Peace.